So you've inspected your bow, you looked at everything looked good, but one cable's got a little bit of fraying or just a little bit of wear, and you're suspect of it. It's pretty simple again. We're going to want to start with the very first thing, and that is loosening our tensioning screw. Again, we don't want to make it too loose, just so where it can rotate. Now, we want to take some weight off of this so we can take the string off so we can get to the limbs and the cables. So what we're going to do is a maximum of 3 turns on each side. And we're going to go 1 revolution at a time on each side. There's 1 for the upper bow. One for the lower. 1 for the upper bow. Here we go. One for the lower bow. One for the upper bow. One for the lower bow. I'm going to do 1 more on each side. That should give me a little bit more than 3/8 of an inch underneath our end cap. The reason that I'm doing this 1 at a time on each side is so that I don't stress the timing cable by putting too much tension on one side of it. Once I've got that done, I can move the bow to where with a little bit of tension on the limb, I can de-string it. Once the string is off, then I'll take this loose, 1, 2, 3. That way I know that I have plenty of slack in my cables. Take my yoke cable off first because it's on the outside. Take my power cable off on the inside. And flip it over and do the same thing, or I can just set it on the edge and do it, however's comfortable for you. I'm going to slide the whole limb out of the limb pocket. As you see, when the hinge opens up, the power cable will come right out. I'll grab an 1/8 inch Allen and take my saddle screw loose. I won't take it all the way out, but I'll take it loose enough to the point that my yoke cable will come out of there and I can get the new one in easily. Now, if you had a red and white yoke cable before and a black and a pink power cable before, that's exactly what you need to put back in. So with the power cable, I'll slide it back in the hinge and close it. I'll find the apex of the red and white cable so I can get somewhere near the middle on the yoke cable and put it back in the saddle. Tighten down the saddle screw just enough that it keeps it from popping out but allows it lateral movement. That seems to be good. We'll hope that holds. Then I'll close it up, slide it back into the limb pocket. And this is where it gets to be a little bit of a dexterity exercise. But as you can see, I've got light pressure holding this together, not enough to be pushing the bow around. Okay, I'm going to start with the power cable. It's a necessity. You won't get the yoke cable in if you don't do the power first. I'm going to slide it in on the inside of the cam into its notch and get it to stay. And I'm going to pull tension against it. That tension holds the limb in place, holds the cable in place on the side you've already put in. There we go, and the power cable's in place. I know you can't see well, so I went into the inside slot here just as I did on the other side. Moving to the yoke cable, it goes on the outside. Put one side in. If it doesn't want to go around there, just move your cam down a little bit. It'll give you some heel clearance on the cam. And pull it to tension on that side. Move it around and start it on the other side. And again, if it doesn't really want to go in, rotate your cam down and it'll slide right in. Make sure everything's in its track. Hold your hands over the cams as such to help it. And tighten it down to maybe 1/4 of an inch or so. You'll see the cables tension up, and that's as good as you want to be. We've just changed both a yoke and a power cable. It's identical for the other side. You're ready to put the bow back together. Okay, and while the other side is done the same way, there's a little bit of a trick. It's mildly different. Because this cam moves, you won't get the same amount of tension. So when you put the limb back together, it'll take just a little more finesse to keep everything together. If you notice, we're tightened down even more than the other side, and we have all of this flex still in there. There's little that we can do about that other than take our time, not get frustrated with it. I do it first time every time now, but I certainly didn't at first, and I'm guessing you won't. So we take the string, put it back on. In this case, even with it having some, there we go, even with it having some tension but not too much, I'm going to let off a little bit more to make it real easy for me to get the string on there. And the whole time you do this, you watch your cables, make sure they stay in their tracks. If they jump, you can just start over. It's not a big deal. Once she's back together, go ahead and check those cables again. Make sure they're still in their groove. If they are, you can put a little bit of tension. One turn at a time, of course, on your limb bolts. Again, making sure that the limbs are still in the limb pockets and the yoke cable is still in the saddle. The turn down here. When you start getting it close, you can look at the distance between your outboard limb and your power limb to tell how much further you have to turn one than the other. Each turn that you take going in lessens that distance. So if one's a lot wider than the other, that's the side you probably need to tighten to get her even. So we're going to turn the bow around and check the tiller. In this case, we're pretty even. Tiller checks out fine. Tighten down. Timing adjustment and tensioning screw. Check to make sure that the cables are both in the saddle. Check the straightness of limbs. They're not straight. When everything's straight, we can tighten back down our saddle screw. And there we go. Another tip, if you've got your string and you're getting ready to take it off and you've had it set up and the bow is shooting well or you had accessories on it, when you take the string off, don't let it unwind. You want the twister in it to keep the brace height the same way that it was, to keep the tuning of the bow, and again, if accessories. So when you take it off, hold both ends of the loops. Put them together, and you can either put them together with a safety pin, a heavy tool, and set it aside. And then whenever you put it back together, everything will be the same.